Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week one of CE 155 Facility Layout and Design here at Escoffier. Upon first glancing at this course, you might be thinking to yourself, kind of a sleeper. It's really not. This is an incredible course. We are so excited to take you on this journey. Regardless of where you go in your career, whether you become a corporate mogul, whether you become an executive chef, whether you have 10 different restaurants underneath your belt, or whether you just remain in the kitchen as a cook, you're probably going to get involved in some type of facility design along the way. Facility layout design is huge in this industry, and it's not only just about where to put the stove. If it was that simple, then anyone could do it. It's about operational efficiency. It's about financial efficiency, and it's about the amount of footsteps we take in a kitchen every day. How many miles does the average chef walk in the kitchen? Does anybody have an idea? Chef Suzanne, how many do they take?
How many miles in the kitchen?
Right.
I'm not really sure, but my husband, his phone watches his steps. He works in the kitchen, and he'll come home some days having walked 30,000 steps in a day.
My wife is a chef, and it's very common that she comes home with about 8 miles on her step meter. So in the kitchen, you think about, we'll just put the stove over there. But not only are we dealing with the financial issues of the whole thing, but we're also dealing with the importance of how many steps the chef takes. We want to keep ourselves fresh on our feet. We want to keep ourselves going. So when you first look at it, you think you're just designing a kitchen, but you're designing so much more than that. And I want to take a minute and introduce myself. My name is Chef Warren Weeks, and together with Chef Suzanne Lasagna, we are going to take you on this awesome journey here, and we're going to show you how to do this facility layout and design. It's going to be a fun and exciting 6 weeks that we're all going to go cruising down this road. And put your seatbelts on. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think everybody's going to learn a lot of good information. Just a brief little thing about myself. I've spent the majority of my career over the last 37 years working all over the world, Trinidad and Tobago, Port of Spain, San Miguel de Allende. I spent most of my career as an executive chef or director of food and beverage. And in between that, I owned a bunch of restaurants as well. So facility layout design has always been a big part of my career. And then, I've been involved in the build of about 7 different restaurants. And then I've been involved in the layout of a lot of restaurants. And a lot of them I don't want to remember either, but they're still there. I live here in beautiful, sunny, extremely hot Tucson, Arizona, right above the Mexican border. I am married to an incredible chef who's always keeping me busy in the kitchen. And then we have a couple of awesome children that keep us probably a little too busy most of the time. So you'll probably see them pop in every now and then, and I apologize in advance for that. I want to take a moment to introduce the other half of this incredible class, Chef Suzanne Lasagna. You want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
I will. Most of these folks I already know, but just in case there's some I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet. My name is Suzanne Lasagna. I actually am in Texarkana, Texas, because someone has to be, I guess. So here I am. My background is the past 10 years or so in education, culinary education. But I've also worked at chain restaurants as general manager. I've been executive chef at country clubs, worked at convention centers as an executive chef. So I've done a little bit also. My husband is also a chef, and I have 2 kids, one of which is a chef also. So we just cannot seem to get away from food in my house. And actually, I don't know if y'all can see this. He sent me a picture of his 28,000 steps. So he just sent me that real quick because I said, send me a big day of steps. So Chef is right. This is pretty important, having stuff in the right place. You do have a lot of steps to take. But I'm really excited to see all of you again, knowing that you've already worked on your menu, and now we're going to do more with it. So this is very cool. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. I'm excited too. I'm really looking forward to this. I've always been a little suspicious though that my wife is driving around on the side of her car with her phone doing this to get more steps. So when she gets home, that way she doesn't have to do anything because she's too tired. But we'll talk about that later. Maybe I'll get 10,000 steps during the class here tonight. I don't know. We'll try that. Just as a reminder to everybody, I know everyone out there knows Chef Suzanne and I share a common goal, and that's your success. We are here to work with you, and we are very, very accessible. If we can talk to you and you guys can contact us when you have issues, when you need assistance, it's going to take you that much further in your career. If you have any challenges understanding the assignment, if you have any other issues going on outside the classroom or whatever the case is, feel free to contact me. I'll be glad to work with you. We'll do a Zoom session and we'll work things out. My direct number is 520-276-6281, and I'll show you where to get that in just a moment. And then Chef Suzanne, if anyone out there is having any kind of problem, they don't understand their assignment, the eval didn't come through, and for some reason you had a question regarding that, please contact Chef Suzanne, and she's going to help you out, and she'll walk you through that whole thing. And this keeps those lines of communication open. The more that we all communicate, the more that we're all going to grow, and the more that we're all going to succeed. So take advantage of the tools that you have. And by all means, I know that everyone here is a little bit further along in the course, but every now and then we have a couple of hiccups with technical issues. Don't forget the good folks at the technical assistance. If you need any help in that area, they are here to help you out. I think we should start the class off tonight by taking a look at our class page, kind of give everybody a little tour about what's going on out there. Has everyone visited our class page? Yes, thumbs up. Awesome. At the top of each week, you're going to notice this little white box that says Escoffier, and that is a message from yours truly, a little intro to the approaching week, some tidbits. There'll be some information in there to help you out, help you succeed with your assignment. So take a minute. The video is only about a minute long each week, and there's some really good information in there. As we scroll down, taking a look at your research materials here. Take 5 minutes following this class tonight and just go through it real quick. This section here about selecting food service equipment, some great information in there that's really going to help you with your facility layout tool. And we're also going to get into that tonight to help you out. And then your facility layout tool right here on the page, you're going to want to open that up and make a copy for yourself, because that's going to become your assignment for the next 6 weeks. And we're going to get into that here in just a few moments. Discussion boards. Each week in this class for the next 6 weeks, we're going to have discussion boards. Don't forget, everyone, that your discussion board, your initial post, is due by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. You must make that initial post, and then following that, you are required to respond to at least 2 other posts. Make a reply to 2 other posts no later than Tuesday at 11:59. So make sure you get that done. I highly recommend Thursday or Friday morning, sit down and just take care of it and get it done. We know all about those live sessions, and you're here. If you happen to miss one, don't forget, we have a live session 1 recording here. Down here this week, our assignment, our equipment list and station map, we're going to begin that journey, and so we're going to be talking about that throughout the evening. So once again, I want to go back and show you one simple thing here real quick that I forgot to mention, because I'm old and sometimes I forget things. Here on the right-hand side of the page, I'm sure all of you know this and you've been told this, our contact information is right here. Here's myself. If you call and I don't answer, shoot me a quick text and I'll get right back to you right away. Here's my email address, and then Chef Suzanne's contact information is down here as well. We are readily available to help you out. So take advantage of that tool. Yeah. How many people out there have had some type of participation in facility layout? Anyone? How many of you guys have arranged your living room and then had to rearrange it again? and then again, and again, right? So with this class, part of what our intention is, and part of what you're going to learn is we're going to learn how to prevent all these multiple moves. And when we go to design a kitchen or do facility layout, it's critical that we do it with purpose. We have to have intent behind everything we do. Every inch of the kitchen needs to be utilized to the maximum efficiency. You have to remember that when you have your own facility, you are paying for every square inch every month. And if it's not being utilized, then that money is going right down the toilet. And if you do some good forethought and some good planning that we're going to teach you over the next couple of weeks, you're going to learn how to utilize that space in a very, very efficient fashion. Our first assignment, you're going to create and design your own facility based on your existing menu. And I believe that comes from 185. Is that correct, Chef Suzanne? Right. So, what's that?
That is correct.
Awesome. With that menu, you've already learned within that menu what equipment you need, how much space you're going to need, and you're going to have to learn how to dissect that information from that menu. That's going to be your starting point. There's a couple of other tools that you're going to have to apply to that. How many customers are you planning on feeding a day? Whether you're doing a 20-seat bakery, whether you're doing a 500-seat bistro, whether you're doing corporate feeding, or whether you're doing a food truck, you need to think all these things through in advance. Remember that when we take a look at this, our assignment this week, it's actually Google Slides, and we're going to be, I think there's 6 or 7 slides in there. They do not correlate with each week. So for example, week 1, you don't do slide 1. You might be working on 2 or 3 of those different slides. So just put that in the back of your pocket. And also with this particular class, I know a lot of people out there have used their cell phones or their smartphones, which work pretty well for some of the other classes. I would definitely recommend utilizing your laptop, because you're going to be clicking and dragging, and you're going to be expanding some spaces. And so if you don't have access to a laptop, you might want to run up to the public library to start working on this assignment, or make arrangements to get one. It'll really, really help you out in the long run. So kitchen equipment, it's a big, big subject. It's probably like buying a car. And or buying a house or making a major purchase. And I don't know of any catalog out there that lists all the best equipment to the worst equipment, and what who rates cars? Who is that? Do you know that, Chef Suzanne? J.D. Powers, right? I don't know that there's a J.D. Powers for kitchen equipment out there, but it is perhaps the single most large investment that you make into any restaurant facility. So you have to be extremely conscientious about what you're going to buy. If you're going to be doing a 20-seat cafe, you don't want to spend $17,000 on a 50-gallon steam kettle. And so this exercise that we're going to be taking you through is going to help work some of that information through in your head. And then when it comes to buying certain restaurant equipment, we in industry just don't pick up the phone and call our local distributor and say, send it. There's a tremendous variance in pricing from purveyor to purveyor. And there's also a huge discrepancy in between new equipment and used equipment, which way to go with that. And there are 100 debates that exist out there. It's always been my preference, if it's within my budget, I do my best to purchase new equipment, especially when it comes to refrigeration, when it comes to things that are heavy in electronics, things with condensers, etc. Because the repair costs can oftentimes exceed the cost of the actual unit itself. So you need to be very conscientious of that as well. When it comes to buying things like stove or deep fryers that are relatively rudimentary in design, that require very little electrical work and rely mostly on thermostats powered by pilots, etc., those sometimes can be some pretty good values with purchasing that equipment used. Those things are built like tanks and meant to last, right? So I've bought a lot of used stoves over the years. Where do you go to buy kitchen equipment? Does anybody know? Any clues? Right? You don't like go cruising to Target with a basket, right? Or you don't go cruising to Walmart. So to purchase kitchen equipment, you have to be a little bit savvy about the whole process. There's a bunch of different purveyors out there all over the United States. Edward Don, Webb Restaurant, lots of local purveyors as well for restaurant equipment. I always recommend getting multiple quotes on the same piece of equipment. It's going to save you a lot of information, and definitely always check into warranties and that type of stuff as well. We're going to take a look at a little presentation now that's going to help you decide what type of equipment. I think are a lot of you out there in the industry already slicing and dicing? Or are a lot of you headed that way still? Thumbs up if you're working in a kitchen. Oh, cool. Okay, we got some people out there. So some of you out there are familiar with the kitchen environment now. We put together this little presentation to kind of help you guys get familiar with what the actual industrial kitchen looks like, and the layout and the practicality of what we're working on. We're going to start out at the creme de la creme. There's nothing wrong with starting out at the top, is there? How many of you are familiar with who Thomas Keller is? Is anybody out there? All right, you got a hand down there, Samantha? Yeah, he's a rock star in our industry. He's got 2 3-star Michelin restaurants, the French Laundry and then Per Se in New York City. Per Se in New York City right now has a check average of about $800 per person, and I think it's a couple of months to get in there, so not bad. Up on the screen right now, you're going to see a picture of Thomas Keller's brand new kitchen at the French Laundry, and this kitchen costs right around $10 million to construct. As much as I wish and I dream and I fantasize that I could end up in this kitchen, it's probably not going to happen right away. So, I just wanted to show you guys what unlimited money can buy. However, let's take a look at something that's a little bit more realistic, where some of us are going to end up working in a lot of kitchens that I have ended up working in. These are some pictures of some reality, and these are pictures of realistic kitchens, whether you be in a B&I account, a cafe, a restaurant, country club. These are real kitchens, and if you notice, every single inch of the space is utilized. Everything is taken care of. So talking about the essential parts of a kitchen, pretty big business out there. All kitchens, all areas of the kitchen have a single intent purpose, right? So we try not to cross-utilize. We're not going to do a dish station and have a prep area inside the dish station. Most spaces are dedicated to a specific use out there. So one of the busiest areas in the kitchen traditionally can be the expo station. And these are some pictures right here of expo stations. This area right up in here is called the window. And you'll see a multitude of tickets hanging up. So the customers ring the tickets in, and then the expediter, which is this gentleman right here, will call the tickets out to the cooks. And it looks like this guy back here is pretty happy. He's waving at people. But the cooks will put the food up into the window, and then the expediter will finish the plates with garnish and then tray them up, and then the servers will take them out to the dining room. So this is an expo area. This is another example of one as well. And then traditionally in front of the expo areas, there'll be a lot of plate storage. They'll store cruettes there and other service-related type items. So if you're going to be doing any type of food service, such as a bistro, brasserie, restaurant, et cetera, you're going to have to set up some type of expo station traditionally. The next part of the kitchen that we're going to take a look at is the pantry. How many people out there are familiar with the pantry area, right? We know mom had a pantry, right? But that's a totally different thing. The pantry in the kitchen is also what we call the garde-manger area. And we are referring to where traditionally the cold items are prepared. So if you order a salad, if you order any type of fruit, a lot of times the dessert will come out of that area as well. So it's basically a cooler area in the kitchen that's away from the hot equipment. And all of the chilled items will be kept in there. These are some examples up here on the screen of the cool areas, the prep areas or garde-manger areas that are kept in a kitchen. This picture right up over here is a great example of utilization of storage space. In commercial kitchens, like I mentioned, we utilize every single inch, even the walls, for storage. And it's also interesting to take a look at these walls that are back here. I know that's not part of the facility layout and design, but in kitchens, we cannot use traditionally regular walls that are drywalled and painted. This is PFP board that's on this wall right here. It has to be a smooth, cleanable surface, which oftentimes can have a tremendous cost associated with it. Taking a look at this pantry area here, this is a chilled prep table, and all the food is inserted into there. So when they get an order, they just put the plate up onto the cutting board there, and then they'll assemble their salad as they're going down the line. Taking a look at the other essential parts of the kitchen, dish area. Ooh, don't forget about the dish area, because otherwise things get messy. The dish area has to have a lot of thought process behind it. The reason for that is you need to have an area going in, you need to have an area going out, and then you need to have another area going out, right? Because servers are going to bring the stuff in, they're going to set it down for the dishwashers to wash, and then they have to leave the kitchen. So you have traffic going in and out right there. And then you also have to allot space for the dishwasher to get out to put all the clean dishes away back to the expo station where it can be utilized again. So a lot of thought process has to be involved in that area. Dishwashers. Does anybody have an idea how much a dishwasher costs? Woo! They're expensive. This CMA quarter unit right here, which is a dishwasher, I believe it does a load of dishes about every 60 seconds, depending on what cycle you have it programmed on. That's about a $10,000 machine right there. So dishwashers can oftentimes be very, very expensive. This is a CMA conveyor unit, which is very popular in hotels where you have large banquet facilities where you're doing a tremendous amount of dishes. So you need to put a lot of thought process. If you have a smaller operation, you're going to want to go with a corner machine or an in-out machine. If you have a very large operation, you're going to want to take a look at doing a conveyor machine, et cetera, et cetera. I had one of these when I was a chef for DoubleTree Hotels. We ran this machine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That hotel was so busy. So just to give you an idea of the volume that goes through there. This is a well laid out dish area right here. The storage for all the small wares that they cook with are stored right in this area. Boom, set, right? So they wash, let out to air dry right there on the shelves, and you're good to go. Walk-in coolers. Woo! Walk-in coolers are essential. We have walk-in refrigerators, and then we have walk-in freezers as well. And these are some examples down here on the bottom. Depending on the size of your facility, you might want to go with an alternate type of refrigeration, which we'll get into in a minute, or you could go with the standard walk-in refrigerator, which has a lot more space in it. It's called a walk-in because we actually walk into it, right? And then same thing with the freezer. I ran one casino for a couple of years, and our walk-in freezer was so large that they actually drove the forklift into it and put pallets of food down. So these things vary in size. Traditionally, they're custom built. They don't come in one standard size. You could get one used, $5,000 to $6,000, Then once you get into condensers and everything else, you're getting up to around $10,000. Newer ones, $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. This is a good thing to buy used, the actual box, because the box is still good. It's the actual refrigeration equipment that gets shot in those units, which is their condensers and coils. Down here, everyone needs to put a little thought process into food storage. We see this one get skipped over quite a bit. When you have a restaurant, you don't get deliveries traditionally every day. You're going to probably purchase 1, 2, 3 times per week. So each delivery, you're going to have enough food for 2 or 3 days per delivery. So you need to have appropriate place to store that stuff. Traditionally, the storage is kept 6 inches off the ground. It's on smooth, cleanable stainless steel racks that are ventilated to allow the product to breathe. So as you're designing your kitchen, make sure you take a close look at that stuff. Give yourself ample space to store the product. However, once again, you don't want to utilize your entire kitchen to be storing things, because that food on your shelf is money in your bank. And you want to keep your money in your bank, not in your shelf. It's very, very important. The other essential areas in the kitchen that you're going to need to pay attention to as far as equipment is concerned. This is the hotline. And there's a couple of various pictures right here. One thing to pay very close attention to is what's above, right? This area right up here, this is referred to as our hood system. These hood systems are extremely expensive. They're sold by the foot traditionally. I've seen quotes of anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per foot because they are stainless steel. So if you have a 10-foot hood, you're going to pay anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000 for it. And then you've got your fire retention systems up there as well, which we'll get into at a later date. Down here, you're going to have to put a lot of thought process into the way you want to lay out your hotline. You can't just go to the store and buy a 6-burner stove, which is this unit right here. Buy yourself a grill and then deep fryer, then hope that you've got everything you need. This is why you're importing that menu from 185 that you've already built. So you have a clear idea of your concept, what equipment you need to purchase. This is another picture right up here of a very nice hotline. These domes that are dropping down into the window area are actually heat lamps, and that's what keeps the food warm before the servers pick it up. Down in this area, this is an additional picture of a hotline. This is where all the action happens in a restaurant. This is where we prepare our entrees and we cook all of our foods off. We heat, we serve. So this is a real heartbeat area of the kitchen. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, when you're designing your kitchen, take note of the way the space is used. This hotline right here, every single inch virtually is utilized. Walls are utilized for storage. They've got stuff hanging from the walls down here. They've got every inch. There's no empty spaces. Let's see. Do we have any questions so far? Anybody have their hands up? Chef Suzanne, do you have anything to add?
No, not yet. I've been chatting in the box a little bit too. So I think there's just a lot of crazy-eyed, scary, all these big numbers, and so.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of cool because you know, they sound like big numbers. It is an investment into your business. You know, they say you have to spend a nickel to make a dime. And I don't know if, you know, I'm sure you could probably go out there and get used equipment and build it up and create a larger business from that, which I've seen people do and become very successful at over time. But the reality is, and the point that's being driven home, is this is a major investment and it needs to be thought out very well. And that's the vital importance behind learning facility layout and design. You don't want to go out and spend this kind of money and then realize that, oops, I did it again. Is that Britney Spears that sings that? Yeah. You don't want to be singing that in your head. So, I mean, if you're going to dump $100,000, $200,000 into a kitchen, you need to know what you're doing before you do it. So it's extremely critical. Getting back to what we were talking about here with various types of equipment. We talked about walk-in coolers, and I showed you a couple of pictures there. This is the actual boxes. And then these units that are right up here with the coils on them, those are the coils which lead out to the condensers. And this is what is so expensive in these boxes right here. They take a little bit of maintenance and they need to be taken care of. So careful consideration with those. You can buy the actual box used, but definitely make sure that you take the time to purchase new coils and a new condenser. Ovens, there's a big variety out there. However, this industry as a whole, all over the world, the places that I've worked, are fairly consistent with the types of ovens that we work with. This is a combo unit right here, and it's got a nice flat top. It's got 6 burners, and it's got 2 different ovens on it. Something you need to pay close attention to, since we're talking about ovens. There's 2 primary types of ovens in the restaurant industry. One is called a conventional oven, which would be pictured right here. That's where the heat comes from the bottom, heats up the oven, something traditional that most of us work with home. However, bakery ovens and other styles of ovens are are often convection ovens, meaning that they have a large fan that circulates the air in the back. I don't know how many people out there at home have ever baked in their ovens, like bread, for example, and like half of it is done, and then the other half on the other side of the oven is like uncooked. Does anybody feel that pain? Yeah. Well, convection ovens help resolve that problem. That doesn't completely resolve that problem, but by circulating the air in those units, it's going to certainly help spread that heat evenly. And so this is a conventional oven, and this is a convection oven down here. These are Blodgett ovens, or Vulcan ovens, maybe, yeah, Vulcans. Fairly expensive unit. You can buy these used, and I have before in one of my restaurants, and they do work out quite well. These ovens are double stacked, meaning that traditionally the oven is only this size, and then they pop another oven on the top of it. So double stacked convection ovens are quite common. This is an example of a deck oven right here. Kind of old school. We used to use these for pizzas a lot back in the day, and then we'd fill it with large roasting pans for saffron rice or steamship rounds, that kind of thing. They're not as common as they used to be. They're great for baking as well, but if you're going to do some type of pizza concept, you might want to consider taking a look into these deck ovens. They're still manufactured. They're just not as common as they used to be. And then mixers, big business. They do get a little expensive, and they come in a variety of different sizes. So do a little research on what size mixer. I think this looks like a 30 or 40 quart mixer. It's quite large. They do come in smaller sizes all the way down to about 4 or 5 quarts. So take a look at that. Deep fat fryers. Lots of people got them, right? And a lot of people think deep frying food is actually bad for you, and it's really not. It's kind of a misnomer. When you deep fry food, it actually creates steam inside the product, and that steam forces the oil out of the food. So it's really not greasy when it's done properly, and so we like to use good quality equipment. This is something that I would consider purchasing used. There's not a lot of electronics in these units. Virtually none. It's got a small thermostat in there that sits over the pilot light. When it gets hot, it opens up a valve and allows the gas to heat. So they're pretty rudimentary devices that are pretty well built and last for quite a while. And a salamander. You gotta have a salamander, right? In basic terms, we'll use a salamander or a cheese melter to melt cheese on top of a burger, to melt cheese on nachos, to gratin certain items, such as gratin potatoes or Gruyere French onion soup. So that's quite a common piece of equipment as well. Taking a look at some other considerations. When you walk into a commercial kitchen, you're probably going to notice sinks everywhere. And we do not decorate the kitchen with sinks. Each sink has a very specific purpose, and it's very, very intentional. For example, in a commercial kitchen, you are not at liberty to wash your hands wherever you want. You have to wash your hands in a designated area, right? So it has to be a designated hand washing sink. And this is a prime example of one right here. So when you do your facility layout, you're going to be required to put some of these into your kitchen to allow your employees to wash their hands. Over here, triple sinks, right? Does everybody know wash, rinse, sanitize? Hot, hot, cold? Yeah. So we wash, we rinse, we sanitize. Right over here, triple sinks. They belong in your dish area. We do not cook in there. We don't do prep foods in there. It's very, very, very important for washing your large pots, pans. Smaller facilities will actually do their dishes in there as well. So you might want to consider getting a triple sink if you're doing a small bakery or if you're doing a small cafe or even counter service. I know here in Tucson, Arizona, food trucks are now required to have triple sinks with sides on them. So things are changing. Down here, we have a picture of a prep sink. So when we go to wash vegetables or if we have to thaw meats, things like that, the kitchen does have special sinks. And so take that into consideration as well. And then tables in the kitchen, we don't use foldable tables. We don't use wooden tables unless it's grandfathered in a particular area or it is a bakery. We use stainless steel tables that are NSF, National Sanitation Foundation. It's very, very important that you understand what NSF means. But these tables are generally 6 feet in length and have shelves on the bottom. And then storage units here, which we talked about on a previous slide. Taking a look at some additional equipment. Flat tops. Anybody like to make pancakes out there? Yeah? Yeah. Pancakes. A lot of people like to do burgers on these things. A lot of people like to sear particular items on these things. There's 1,000 different uses for flat tops out there. Depending on the menu that you wrote in 185 will certainly determine if you actually need a flat top or not. They come in quite handy. And then over here, we have a tilt skillet, which is quite common in the hotel industry, where I spent most of my career. They accommodate very large quantities of product, up to 50 gallons, and you'll make your soup, your stock, your broth, whatever the case may be in there, and then you tilt it up and it pours the liquid out onto the floor. Grilling, how many people like grilling out there? Like, we got any grillers going on? Right? So whether you're doing kebabs, whether you're doing ribeyes, whether you're doing Chilean sea bass and you want to grill it, you're going to need a nice broiler in your restaurant. This is another piece of equipment that you might want to consider purchasing used. They're not terribly expensive, brand new either. However, they are built to last. The only thing you might want to consider replacing on them is the cast iron grates. This is something that you're going to want to make sure you go with a commercial unit. Don't run up to Walmart and buy one of those little countertop broilers. Number one, they don't put out enough BTUs. Number two, they're going to last you for approximately 2 weeks to 3 weeks before they completely disintegrate on your tabletop. So make sure you get a good broiler. And then least but not last, down here in the corner, this poor little guy, is a steam kettle. A steam jacket, kettle, a bain-marie. There's a multitude of different uses for them or names for them in the industry. However, this is something that will make soups or stocks in these. Generally, they're a little bit smaller. I've had a couple that are up to 50 gallons, but there's actually steam that goes on to the sides of these units that's encased and creates a very, very hot environment, very quick, but very soft as well. So it's a great tool to have working in the kitchen. So we're almost done with this wonderful presentation here. Everybody hang in there. Steam tables. Chef Suzanne, have you cooked on steam tables before?
No.
No. We call that a lot dish out service in the Mexican food industry. Daryl up there is going, he's shaking his head. Yeah, you've seen that before, right? So has anybody else out there done any type of dish up service? Yeah, kind of, Melissa, kind of. So in certain environments, and I'll use Mexican food again, which is very popular here in southern Arizona, they'll keep their refried beans and their rice, sometimes enchiladas and other things in the steam table. Other uses for that would be for a banquet facility where we saute our vegetables, keep our grilled meats warm while we're plating our foods. So that is one of the uses for that steam table right here. And then over here, this is called a reach-in refrigerator. If you're in a smaller facility and you don't want to go with a walk-in cooler, or if you're a larger facility and you need a walk-in cooler and you also need a reach-in, this is the type of unit that you're going to want to look at. They come in 1-door, they come in 2-door, they come in 3-door units. This is not the type of unit that you want to be going in and out of. They're not designed for a la minute service that happens at the minute. They're designed to hold items for a period of time. So this would be something that you would locate in the prep area of your kitchen. It's very, very important. Down here, this is a reach-in unit. We talked about this with the pantry. This is a triple door pizza prep table with a top on it. You open the top, and inside of there are all your prepared, it's all your prepared mise en place that you would utilize to make your salad. So all of this equipment comes in various lengths, sizes, heights. So there's a lot of different things to look at. I did want to mention floors and kitchens. It's a pretty critical subject. It's not too involved in the facility layout here. However, floors in kitchens must be dealt with properly because they become a real extreme safety hazard. There's a lot of stuff that slips and spills onto that floor on a daily basis, and that environment becomes very, very slippery. So this picture here shows some rubber mats that are down on the floor, which give the cooks a little feeling of cushion on their feet. When you're on your feet 10, 12 hours, you know, those dogs wear out after a while, and so those rubber mats keep you going for just a little bit. Then we are on to this week's assignment. And I'm going to get back to this page here in just a moment, and we're going to go through this in detail and give everybody a chance to ask some questions. I know I've been talking a lot, and my voice is about to go. How am I doing, Chef Suzanne? Is there anything I'm missing?
No, I think you've done great. Actually, something that I wanted to add, that if you've never been to one, it's a great opportunity to look at some of this equipment. Try and find a local place that sells new and used restaurant equipment. Cool places to go. Normally they have all the new equipment out front, and then it's like this magical room in the back where they have all, like when places buy new equipment, they trade in or they sell their old equipment back to these places, and they're just the coolest things to walk around and look at all these old equipment and that's available. So if you've never been to one, look in your area and see if there's a place. And a lot of times they'll let you come in and look around, and it's super cool. So
we call them the candy store.
It is so great. It is. Yeah. It's like finding out where the elves make the toys. It's super cool. Yeah. Back areas.
Yeah, all of you, and I hope all of you get to the point at some point in time in your career where you get to know these restaurant equipment purveyors. They can oftentimes be very special people. They've got real personality, and I've always wondered, you know, what part of the mafia they're associated with. But yeah, you walk in there, and there's this, like Chef Suzanne is saying, there's this incredible equipment everywhere, and it's like, whoo! It's like looking at Thomas Keller's kitchen, right? We can't afford it. And if you talk to them, the more you get to know them, they kind of drop that guard, and then all of a sudden they're taking you in the back room, right? And all of a sudden your budget's increased tremendously because you're spending so little money, and it's you don't know where the equipment came from. You don't want to ask, right? You just take it and you go. So it's a lot of fun, and like I mentioned at the beginning of our class, it's really critical. I know I'm throwing out some big numbers, and I know I'm talking about some of this stuff. You really have to shop around. right? It's critical. I don't know how many of you guys have ever gone out and bought a car and just walked onto the car dealership and given them a check? No? Kind of ask about pricing and see what kind of discounts are available. And so you really need to pay attention to that kind of stuff. This week's assignment is some pretty cool stuff. You're going to need to fill out this first sheet, and we're going to get to the remainder of the sheet here in just a moment. This is going to come up, and it's your station map and equipment list that you're going to start. You're going to utilize this sheet to build onto week 2, which will build onto week 3, and et cetera, et cetera. You're going to create a link from your Google Drive with your 185 menu in it, and you're going to paste that link right up here. And we need to make sure that's in there, so when Chef Suzanne takes a look at it, we want to make sure that everything correlates, and we also want to make sure that you're doing a good breakout of the information to see if you missed anything that we could help you out with, to perhaps say, hey, you know, maybe this kind of equipment would be a little bit more efficient for this particular item. So this is a sheet that's been filled out very, very well. This particular student has listed all of their items right here. Soups and entrees, looks like they have kind of a Mediterranean type theme going. And then the components, these are the ingredients that are utilized to prepare the actual dishes itself. So if I just look at this one here, I know I need chicken breast, refrigeration. Chicken broth, I know I'm going to need some pots and storage to be able to prepare that chicken broth. I'm probably also going to need a prep table because I'm going to have to be cutting up mirepoix and those types of things. And then when I look down here, lasagna noodles, ground turkey, Italian, okay, so I need refrigeration, Italian sausage, I need storage for that, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to really think it through with each particular item. Chicken breast, when they come in, where am I going to keep them, right? I'm not going to keep them in the pot. I'm probably going to keep them in the walk-in cooler or my refrigerator. Okay, so now I need a reach in. So everything needs to be thought through correctly. When I get that chicken, when I take it out of the reach in, I begin to fabricate it. Where am I going to fabricate it at? I can't fabricate it in the walk-in. Well, they do have those, and those commissaries are a different story. But and then like down here with the lasagna, you know you need prep tables to prepare it. You know you need somewhere to cook the lasagna noodles. You know you need somewhere to cook off the ground turkey. You know you need equipment to cook off the sausage to make the sauce. You're probably going to need ovens to be cooking the lasagna off. You might need a steam table to keep that in there if that's what you're going to do during service. Does that make sense to everybody? Thumbs up. Am I going down the right road? Yeah? Okay. So each particular component that's listed, you got to pretend. Sometimes when I look at this, I look at these items and I think Fred, Jack, Harry, Mary, right? Everybody's got to have a house. Everybody's got to have clothes to live. Everybody's got to be able to go somewhere. Everybody's got to be able to work. Each particular item has to be able to go somewhere, be prepared somewhere, be cooked somewhere, be stored somewhere, and be served to the guests somewhere. So you have to think through the entire thing. As you're preparing these items, you're going to realize that there's a lot of items that will utilize the same piece of equipment. So think it through in your head. If I know that I've got to make a soup, this chicken noodle soup right over here, and I know that I have to make tomato sauce, and I know that I've got to prep out these chicken breasts, I'm not going to put my convection oven way at one end of the kitchen. I'm not going to put my 6-burner at the other end of the kitchen. And I'm not going to put my refrigeration way at the other end of the kitchen. And I'm not going to put my prep table out in the front. I want to condense that space. So I have to take as few steps as possible to prepare those dishes. Does that make sense? So I'm going to take my convection oven where I'm going to cook my lasagna. I'm going to put it next to my 6-burner stove. And in front of that, I'm going to have my prep table so I can just turn and work at the same time instead of having to walk all over the earth trying to prepare one dish. Same thing, they've got another soup down here. So after you talk about the components, each kitchen has a station, right? We talked about some of those stations, the expo station. The hot line is traditionally broken down into a saute station, broiler station, an expo. You'll have an expo on the other side. Then you have garde-manger station and the saucier station in some kitchens. So you have to kind of assign where all that's going to go, right? So for this chicken noodle soup, for example, the station, saute station would be perfectly fine if it was coming off the hot line. However, in your restaurant, if you want your expediter to dish the soup up, which is very common, put it in the expo station. You'll need a bain-marie to keep it warm, or an insert to keep it warm, and then boom, right off the top. Does everybody have a clear understanding of this?
Can I jump in for 1 second, Chef?
Please do, please do.
Awesome. All right, so there's not an example on this particular assignment, so I'm just going to say, instead of on the bottom, if it was, instead of a garden salad, if it was, say, a grilled chicken Caesar salad, you would want to make sure that you have all the components listed. So you would want to make sure you have the chicken and the lettuce and the dressing, and maybe you've got a breadstick or something with it. But you want to make sure all those components were listed, because some of those things are not all going to come from the same station, right? So the chicken is probably going to come from a grill station. The salad will probably come from garde-manger station. The bread may come from, you know, a bakery, a baking station. So you want to make sure that's part of the reason that you want all those components listed, because some things are going to come from different stations. And the same thing with the equipment. The equipment that'll be used may not all be from one station. So that's part of the reason that you're doing the setup like this.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. That's very true. We traditionally have a multitude of dishes that require a multitude of different stations, especially on the hot side, you know, where you've got a sauteed component and you've got a broiled component, and that are all on the same dish. The grilled chicken Caesar salad is a fantastic example. So you need to think that through about the location of your equipment. In one kitchen that we did, we actually rearranged the equipment so that the broiler was at the end of the hot line, which was next to the pantry station. So during downtimes, that pantry cook could actually grill off their own chicken. And then during busy times, the broiler cook would grill the chicken and just pass it right over to the pantry cook. And so you really have to think these things through all the time. Does anybody have any, what's that, Chef?
I was just going to say, we do have a question about what if it is a food truck and it's essentially the exact same kind of thing, but I figured I'd let you talk about that, Chef.
All right, food trucks, that's a great question. I'm glad somebody brought that up. Food trucks you're just basically condensing things down considerably. You need to be extremely conscientious, number one, of your menu, which will dictate your mise en place, which will dictate your kitchen equipment. Does that make sense to everybody? So you're not going to go into a food truck concept with a tremendously large menu, because number one, you're not going to have the space to prepare it. You're not going to have the space to store it. You're not going to have the space to prep it all out. So when it comes to working with food truck operations, we're going to have extremely limited menus, and food trucks have to be designed so the person that is cooking, everything is within reach, right? So oftentimes, and I know this is a little bit reverse of just what we just said, but oftentimes in a food truck, the layout of the equipment will dictate what your menu is. Does that make sense? So if you have a broiler and you have a flat top and then you have a low boy refrigeration unit in your food truck, and that's all you can fit in that space, then you're going to have to really work your menu around to work within that equipment. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty good. What other kind of questions do we have out there? Anybody? Anyone? Crickets?
I know that I didn't see any, but at least nobody said they had a question about it. But catering will be the same kind of thing also. You're just going to assume that you have, you set up your kitchen for the menu that you had for 185.
Correct. And with catering, With catering operations, we're probably going to take a look at more of like a commissary type facility. And that setup is going to be a little bit more generic in nature because of the fact that catering operations oftentimes have widely varying menus, but they all circulate around the same principle of bulk preparation. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody out there. So with catering operations, you're going to really want to take a look at a lot of prep space, so multiple prep tables. You're going to want to take a look at utilizing larger volume cooking equipment like that tilt skillet that we looked at, so we can prepare everything in bulk versus a la minute cooking where we work with smaller quantities of food. Does that make sense? Any other questions out there? Let's see. We can answer some questions here.
Erin has her hand up.
Hi, Erin.
Hi. I was wondering about the fryer. Does it have to be under a hood?
Fryer systems have to be under a hood. The way it works with code, which is pretty much universal all over the United States, and hood systems have what we call traditionally Ansel systems, or pipes that come down from the vent, and those pipes are up in the vents. They have little clips. They're about this big, and those clips are heat sensitive. So if they become too hot, 250 degrees or 300 degrees or 500, whichever size clips you buy, they melt, they snap, and then they release a chemical down into the kitchen, which is called Ansel, which immediately evacuates all of the oxygen, which extinguishes the fire. So each piece of equipment technically has to have a direct Ansel pipe above it, especially deep fryers, because they can be rather hazardous and difficult to extinguish. There are some really tricky laws and regulations out there. A salamander, for example, which is what we took a look at for the gratin and the burgers and that type of thing. If you call it a salamander, it's required to have an Ansel system to it. It's required to be underneath the hood. If you call it a cheese melter, it doesn't. So there's some really tricky things depending on what your local laws and health codes are.
And what about a steam kettle?
A steam kettle?
Does that not have?
A steam kettle is a really iffy thing. A steam kettle, you're definitely going to want to have underneath your hood system because it's going to do a lot of damage over a period of time to your kitchen because they generate a tremendous amount of steam into the air. Depending on where your broiler unit is located, the smaller ones like the Groen unit that we took a look at a moment ago is a self-contained unit. So it'll produce the steam, and what you're cooking produces a lot of steam as well, and that causes a lot of deterioration. And I would say yes, 99% of the time your local code is going to require it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And it's just you know, I talked about the cost of hoods. Those can be purchased used if you're lucky enough to find one that's good for your facility. They are considerably less expensive that way. And it's always best to keep that equipment underneath the hood system in the event of an emergency. Yeah. Who's next? We have Daryl out there.
Yeah, Chef. My original question is, are we're filling out the whole box, all the boxes, or are we just putting our menu label in the top of the box? Are we doing both? You're
doing both. This week. So you're going to fill that first sheet out, right? Right. So you're going to list your components, the station, and then the equipment.
Thanks, Chef.
For 5 items.
For 5 items only, not the entire. Thank you, Chef Susan, for clarifying that. Not for every item, just 5 items only.
Okay.
Is that good? All right. All right, Daryl. Let's take a look. Since we're getting down to the end here, let's take a look at this week's assignment for our actual submission. We always like to help out Chef Susan to make sure that we clarify all the information that's due this week so there's no confusion from anybody, which I have a tendency to do with people. This is your actual assignment submission page. Week 1, everybody. So you're going to create a copy of that facility layout design sheet. which is right up here. There's a facility layout tool. You're going to make a copy of that, and that's what you're going to utilize for this week's assignment. And you're going to fill in for 5 menu items, all of those boxes, right? So you're going to list the menu item, the component, the station, and then the equipment required, right? And then the grading rubric is as listed here. And that is due no later than Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we get so excited when you get your assignments in by Saturday or Sunday, which allows Chef Suzanne plenty of time to review that information and give you the opportunity to make any changes should you need it. So, did I miss anything on that, Chef Suzanne?
As far as, actually, we can put that up one more time.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Something that I think gets missed more than anything, and it is probably the easiest 10 points you will have in every assignment in this particular course, is having your concept summary. It's the first thing listed is your concept summary. So basically, if you're going to have just 1 or 2 sentences to tell me what kind of business that you have. So if you say that you're going to have a fine dining seafood restaurant that's going to seat about 75 people, that's good. That's what I need to know. If I look and I don't really know what I'm looking at, it's really hard for me to kind of see what more equipment you might need or how things are laid out. So, and you can just cut and paste that. It can go on your assignment page. You can put it somewhere as long as I see it. It's a super easy 10 points. So don't forget that. And as far as other things that get overlooked, refrigeration, people forget refrigeration on this assignment a lot, even though it's everywhere. It's really easy to forget because you're like, okay, I got to have a grill, I got to have a flat top, and you forget about refrigeration. So make sure you do that. And what you don't need to put is small things. You don't have to put mixing bowls and tongs and foil. Don't need any of that. If it takes up major table space or floor space, you need to list it.
Good points. Excellent points. I noticed when I was doing these assignments a while ago that the refrigeration was kind of an issue, and make sure that you include that concept. You're trying to paint a picture inside your evaluator's head when they take a look at the information that you've prepared. So that concept really helps us understand exactly where you're going with your project. I want, if everybody could just take a look at this whole entire class, think about it like going on vacation, right? I don't know how many people, decide you guys get in your car and you start driving and you think, where am I going? And then when you get wherever you decide to go, you think, where am I going to stay? And then you go in your room and you say, what am I going to wear? You think about every detail in advance before you leave. That's the same thing that we're dealing with when it comes to facility layout. It's critical information. If you think it through in the beginning, you're going to be successful and you're going to succeed, and you're going to make it. I also, as we wrap up here, I just want to reiterate the fact that Chef Suzanne and I are both here for your success. That is our goal. Please reach out to us. We are here to help you. We are readily available. So let us know what we can do to help you. And it's been great talking to everybody. Does anybody have any last questions? Have a fantastic evening, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.